Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're going way out there into the Delta Quadrant,
Super base.
looking closely at a really interesting situation on the USS Voyager. You've got Starfleet officers and, well, former Maquis rebels.
Suddenly having to work side by side based on logs, reports. It's quite a mix.
Talk about a complicated team dynamic right from
Yeah.
the very beginning.
Absolutely. I mean, think about it. You've got Starfleet, very established, protocols for everything.
Right. The book, they wrote the book.
Exactly. And then, bam, they're thrown together with the Maquis, a group born out of, well, rebellion.
Operating very differently.
Right.
Much more fluid, maybe. Needs must.
Right, adaptable. And they're all stranded together, light years away from anything familiar. That isolation, wow, it really sets the stage.
And into this already pretty tense situation, a major problem hits Voyager.
A big one.
We're talking about the bioneural gel packs. Now, for you listening, think of these as kind of like the ship's central nervous system.
Yeah, the core components, processing information, keeping things running, vital.
And these vital parts start malfunctioning a lot. And it turns out it's not just a technical glitch.
That's right. It starts small, maybe one pack, but it escalates. Lieutenant Torres investigates in sickbay, and uh-oh.
What did she find?
Something much more concerning. A contagious infection, actually, within the biological bits of these packs.
Contagious. In the circuitry.
Kind of. Think of it like a disease affecting the organic parts, disrupting how they work, like a virus in us, that discovery. Suddenly, the stakes are sky high.
And adding to this pressure cooker, we meet some key players right off the bat. Lieutenant Tuvok.
Ah, Tuvok, the logical Vulcan.
He gets the job of training the Maquis crew members in Starfleet ways. And almost immediately,
Resistance. Yeah, you see it straight away. People like crewman Dalby.
he doesn't hesitate, does he? Voicing objections, looking out for his Maquis mates.
It really highlights that clash, doesn't it? Starfleet's all about safety protocols, collective experience, the Maquis.
More immediate problem solving.
Mm-hmm.
Individual initiative.
Exactly. They value that because they had to survive that way. So Tuvok's strict rules meet their, let's say, improvisational style.
That moment when Dalby fixes a gel pack himself
Yeah.
really shows
Oh,
it.
yeah. He saw a problem, fixed it, his way. Couldn't grasp why that was wrong by Starfleet regs.
He literally says, on our ship, when something went wrong, you fixed it. Very direct.
No nonsense. But Tuvok's right, too, from a Starfleet view. Those protocols exist for a reason, especially with critical systems.
Dalby's frustration is, well, you can see it. And it really tees up the whole integration challenge.
So, as these failures get worse, spreading through the ship, the big question becomes,
How do these two groups, these two philosophies, handle a crisis threatening everyone?
Yeah.
Can that rigid Starfleet way adapt? Does it need to?
which leads Captain Janeway to make a key call. She sees the friction, sees the Maquis lack that formal training,
So she sets up a training program, Starfleet Operations 101, basically.
led by Tuvok himself, in the cargo bay, trying to bridge that gap, build a more unified crew for these emergencies.
And how does that go? Tuvok, being Tuvok, meticulous.
Yeah.
Starfleet Academy style.
Yeah, cargo bay turned classroom. Tuvok lays down the law. And the McKinn reaction...
He's not exactly eager students, let's say.
No, the resistance is palpable, almost rebellious in little ways. Henley's headband. Against regs.
Chilska's Bloody Medallion, too. Personal symbols, also against the code.
Even Geron's boots deliberately scuffed the earring. Small acts of defiance, right? Holding on to who they are.
Pushing back against what feel like pointless rules to them.
And then you have Dalby. He confronts Tuvok head-on, defends Geron, calls the whole thing insulting.
He's basically saying, look, we've been doing our best out here, surviving, and now you're telling us we're not good enough.
Yeah.
It feels unfair.
It's a really important moment. Their path wasn't Starfleet, so being told their best isn't up to snuff.
Yeah, that stings.
Which brings Chakotay into it, in the mess hall.
Right. And he uses a very direct method.
Yeah.
Arguably more Maquis-like discipline, really.
Gets Dalby to back down, at least outwardly, to agree to the training. It shows Chakotay trying to walk that line, doesn't it? He gets the Maquis mindset, but needs cooperation for the ship.
So Tuvok's trying rules and regs.
Yeah.
Chakotay uses a more forceful approach. But underneath all this,
Voyager itself is in deepening trouble. Those gel pack failures are getting worse. Fast.
yeah, the frequency ramps up. It's not just inconvenient anymore. Vital systems start dropping offline.
Power fluctuations everywhere. Comms failing. Transporters unreliable. Even life support starts to go on some decks.
And they're running out of replacements. Can't replicate them.
Exactly. It's a real race against time. Find the cause, fix it before the ship just stops.
And the cause When they finally pin it down, it's pretty unexpected, isn't it?
Oh, definitely. It involves Neelix and
Yeah.
his unique cooking.
It's cheese.
His homemade grilled cheese, yeah. Made from something called Splicht he brought aboard.
How does that connect?
Well, the EMH is examining an infected pack, and he points out, you need bacteria to make cheese.
The penny drops. Something from Neelix's kitchen.
That's the first clue. Then they start connecting the dots. The EMH theorizes the cheese is the source of these volatile bacterial spores.
Spores getting into the ship's ventilation.
Exactly. Spreading everywhere, invisibly. But there's another layer.
Which is?
The theory is there's a virus inside these bacteria, something incredibly tiny, missed by the initial scans.
Wow. So the virus hitches a ride on the bacteria spores from the cheese, spreads through the vents.
And starts infecting the bioneural circuitry. It's this subtle accidental contamination. Shows how interconnected everything is on a ship.
Really drives home how one seemingly small thing can cascade in a closed system. Wow.
Meanwhile, as they're figuring that out, Tuvok, he's changing a bit.
You think so? Maybe that earlier chat with Neelix about the Keela flower?
I think so. That analogy Neelix used about needing to be flexible, to bend so you don't break, it seems to stick with Tuvok.
Makes him question his rigid by-the-book way.
Perhaps, because then he interacts with Dalby and Sandrine's, that holodeck bar.
Yeah.
And it's different.
How so?
He tries to have a personal conversation, asks about Dalby's past, his family. That's not typical Tuvok, right?
Hey, not at all. And we learned about Dalby's tough life, Bajoran frontier, losing someone.
Yeah.
It explains a lot.
It does. His anger, his distrust of authority. And Tuvok starts to get why Dalby is so protective of Juron.
He sees Juron reminds Dalby of his younger self.
That's what Tuvok observes. Dalby even says he wants to stop Juron going down that same path.
Which loops back to why Chakotay put Juron in the training anyway. Build skills, self-esteem, offer another way.
It's all interconnected. Motivations, pasts, shaping everything.
So Tuvok's trying to connect, understand, but Voyager's still fighting this infection.
Right, and the EMH makes another crucial discovery. Heating the circuitry.
Heating it up.
To a specific temperature, might kill the virus, which leads to this incredibly desperate, very risky plan.
Okay, what's the plan?
They need to superheat the entire gel pack system, and the only way to generate that much heat quickly?
Uh-oh. Warp engines.
Invert the warp field. It's a massive gamble. Requires diverting all power, including life support.
Whoa. All power. That's extreme.
The potential for disaster is huge. And right in the middle of this...
Tuvok and the trains are stuck. Where?
In the cargo bay. Where they were training, the warp field inversion starts, temperatures climb like crazy.
Yeah, they can't get out.
Jaron's in the control room trying to open the doors for them, but then disaster strikes. A plasma burst.
Oh, no.
Yeah. Creates an immediate threat of toxic gas filling that cargo bay. It's suddenly life or death in there.
This is it then. The ultimate test.
For everyone. Tuvok, initially, he falls back on logic, on Starfleet protocol, assesses the situation.
He makes a hard call.
Makes the tactically correct call, as he might see it. Prioritize the group over the individual, Jaron. Sacrificing one to save many, essentially.
Cold logic.
But Dalby just explodes, rejects it completely, defies Tuvok's order, risks his own life, goes back into that bay for Jaron.
Wow. Pure defiance.
And here's the real turning point. Tuvok. Despite what he just said, despite the protocol...
He goes back too.
He goes back for Jaron, too. It's this huge deviation from his own rules. Shows. Maybe responsibility, empathy, even... for these trainees.
That's the aha moment, isn't it?
Absolutely. The infection gets purged. Sure, that saves the ship. But the shift in Tuvok, that's profound.
And then Shell and Dalby, who are just resisting him.
They rescue both Tuvok and Jaron, the aftermath. It's powerful. Tuvok actually admits that sometimes bending the rules is necessary, even desirable.
Tuvok says that. Oh.
And Dalby, hearing this, basically says, well, if you can bend the rules, Lieutenant, maybe we can learn to follow them when needed.
A real moment of mutual understanding, forged in fire, literally.
Pretty much, and a respect earned the hard way.
So bringing this deep dive toward a close, what are the big takeaways here? This whole ordeal, the clashes, the crisis, it seemed like it forced them together, right?
Absolutely. You see the challenge is crystal clear, trying to merge different cultures, different ways of operating, especially under pressure.
Yeah, not easy.
But you also see just how crucial adaptability is. That rigid protocol, it has its place, definitely. Essential for safety, order.
But not always the only answer. Or the best one.
Exactly. Sometimes you need flexibility, You need to understand why people act differently, value their experience. That's what gets them through.
Tuvok realizing he needed to bend, Dolby meeting him halfway. Those are the key shifts.
Definitely. Learning from each other, finding that common ground.
It really makes you think about your own experiences, doesn't it? Navigating different viewpoints, adapting when things get tough, when the old rules don't quite fit.
For sure. This dive shows that even in rigid systems, maybe especially there, flexibility and understanding the human element, that's vital. Individual experiences matter.
So here's a final thought for everyone listening to mull over.
Go.
In what situations, maybe in your work, your life, might a rule that seems unbreakable actually need to be bent or even broken?
Ooh, good question. And what are the consequences, right? Good and bad.
What's that balance between structure and adaptability?
Yeah.
Between sticking to principles and, well, pragmatic flexibility.
Yeah, finding that balance, that's the challenge, isn't it?
Some powerful food for thought. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into a really critical time on Voyager.
Hope it offered some insights.
We certainly hope it gave you some valuable perspectives on navigating complex situations and maybe a new appreciation for that messy, difficult, but ultimately necessary process of finding common ground, even when you start worlds apart.